and you can clap. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of AusTableTalk. My name is Luke, and I'm here at the table with Steve and Emerson as usual, but for the first time,
hey,
Shannon is with us.
Yes.
Welcome,
Shazza.
Yeah, I upgraded from cameraman last week.
That's right. That's right. You're actually at the table now.
Yeah.
So this is good. Okay, so first time that you've been with us on the show. So nobody here knows who you are. So let's start there. So give a little bit of context. If you had to tell us 3 things about yourself that are the most important or interesting, what would those 3 things be?
I have a wife. Her name is Zoe. She's out in the cameras at the moment.
Yeah.
Hey Zoe.
I am doing part-time Bible working with the church at the moment.
Nice.
And for the third thing, I'm pretty unique in a lot of ways. I'll have when photos are going taking, I put on a silly face, just be funny.
It's just you.
Yeah, and in every aspect, really, I'm quite unique and do something a little bit quirky. Bring a smile to people's faces.
That's good.
Yeah, I will also add that in the years that I've known you, you've got so much patience and grace for the people around you, and I think that is a Holy Spirit thing. So
Thank you.
That is
Yes,
awesome.
I believe that too.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, for our episode today, we'll get into it in a minute. We're going to be talking about cults, but as is our practice from our online travels in the week, we like to share some reels and feels. So we have a couple to share. So I think one from myself and one from Emerson. So the one that I saved, I believe, is up and ready to go. So Zoe, can we have that one? From Padawan to Disciples, I like that. Daniel too, of course.
I'll be with you.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I have never been a member of a church where any of those would have hit. So yeah.
Heresy.
Yeah, I know. You would be a heretic for it, but it appealed to me. Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you want to introduce this one?
All right. This is my reel. It's a bit of a fun one.
Yeah.
A bit of a funny one. So I actually watched it and then it kept scrolling, and I was like, I need to save this for the podcast, and scrolled up and found it again. So.
Nice.
Oh, Jesus dead at 33. Oh, I can't believe that. Oh, that's really affected me, that has. Oh my God. Oh, I just looked on his profile and he posted a photo last night of him and his friends out for dinner. Oh, people are commenting underneath, the Last Supper. Oh, this isn't going to be a good Friday. Oh, wow. Apparently he's alive. Yeah. People are saying he's risen. What's this? Breaking, Jesus of Nazareth reportedly seen alive after public execution 3 days ago. Developing story. He's amazing. Oh, some people are saying it's not real. Yeah, someone's written, not saying I don't believe, but until I see the holes in his hands myself. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, wait. Mary Magdalene has posted a photo of her outside the tomb, and it says, for all the doubters, tomb's empty. He said what he said. Hashtag, he is risen. Hashtag Sunday surprise. Someone's posted a meme. It's that monkey doing the side eye like that, and it says, Judas when he found out Jesus had risen. That's brilliant. Someone's put, men will literally do anything to avoid doing any housework. Someone's put, okay, I definitely didn't have Jesus dying and rising again on this year's bingo card. Oh, McDonald's have just posted, free fillet of fish with every Big Mac meal. Hashtag, he is risen and so is our bun. Nike have posted a photo of him and they've put, he just did it. Oh no!
Oh, that is.
Oh dear. I thought it was fun because it's like if it had happened today, and the internet trolls and the way that we as a
internet
society
culture
act,
operates. Yeah, that's exactly what it would be.
It's exactly how it would
Yep.
have gone.
Yep.
And then I love how I put in like the Maccas, like trying to make a bit of money.
Yeah, yeah. Brand recognition. So, yeah. Yeah, I thought that
Mary
was
Magdalene being like a bit of an influencer or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
You needed the proof. Here it is.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that was a bit of fun. Cool. So, just before we get to the main topic, Tribe Tale. So we share a little bit of whatever's been happening in the community, in the comment sections. If you are not yet a part of our Discord server, feel free to come and join us there. But there is a new member of the Table Tribe. His name is Jakey, and he has jumped on board with us. I'll just read his intro message. He said, "I'm glad to have found this community. I'm also a Christian from Australia. I wasn't born one, but I had an amazing come to faith moment during COVID.
Nice.
I am very glad to
Praise
see this
God.
discussion podcast regarding the Christian faith in our backyard, and I am keen to see where it heads." So, Jakey, you are a legend. Thank you for joining us. Keen to get to know you better in the channel. Another one is Elliot Huff. He commented on some of our videos and he's like, "Oh, I'm so glad I came across this in my feed. Thanks for sharing this episode. We appreciate you. Thank you for watching and participating with us." So
Awesome.
you guys are the whole reason that we do this. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that clickbait topical title certainly went out broader. Because
Yeah, last week's episode.
because it was topical, I think it went wider than
Yeah.
we would have expected.
Yeah, I feel like we should try that more often.
Be a bit topical.
Yeah, just like
yeah.
grab something that's
Sure.
actually people are paying attention to, right?
Yeah, the algorithm's gonna, and it was like just late enough so that all the early people who got their videos out, they like everyone had watched those.
The wave
The wave had died down,
crashed,
and then it was
yeah.
kind of like, oh, there's another one. The algorithm's like, quick.
Fill the gap, fill the breach.
Anyway,
Yeah. Oh, super cool. All right. Well, to get into our topic, the idea is that we want to talk about how do we know that Christianity isn't just a big cult? And this question, by the way, came from a ATT live event that we had a few weeks back now, a month ago back, or whatever it was. We asked the crowd that was there in person.
the crowd.
Yeah, a crowd. Okay, 40 people.
Padding
right?
us down.
30 people, right? I did not say it was a big
20,000
crowd.
people in the stadium.
They were a talkative lot. It was fun.
Yeah, I was going to say,
it was a good night.
Do you think we could have handled any more conversation than what we had? Like,
it was a
Yeah,
great
in the
night.
wild.
We needed longer.
In fact, I think that if there's more people, there's less people talk.
That's
I've
true.
always found that the bigger the crowd, the less people engage. It should be the other way around, but that's just the way people are.
Yeah, literally, we didn't even get to the end of all of like the discussion topics that we had, but it had already gone so long. We were like closing up, and
Yeah.
people were saying, "Oh no, let's keep
Yeah,
talking."
we were trying to land the plane for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But everyone had such good stuff to say. No, it was fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, so that's
Go
fine. So
on.
my point is that's where this topic came from. We asked the question, what are some of the topics that we don't talk about in our churches? And this was one of the things that people submitted. We had like a screen up, and people were submitting anonymously for what questions they wanted to hear more of. And this was the question that came up: how do we know that Christianity isn't just a big cult? So, I think the logical place for us to start though is like, what is a cult? Why is that a thing? So, maybe I don't know. Maybe I'll read the definition first, and then I'll let you let's all jump on it. Okay. A cult is typically defined as a group, often religious or spiritual in nature, that exhibits intense devotion to a particular figure, idea, or object, and is often characterized by practices and beliefs that deviate from mainstream society or religion. While not all cults are harmful, the term is commonly used to describe cults that are manipulative, authoritarian, and controlling. Okay, so that's...
Cool. Okay, except for the last bit, it is a cult.
Yeah, that's right. Up until the very end, I was like, this sounded a lot like our church.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I specifically then got a list of the characteristics of cults, right? This is where I think it becomes a little more obvious where the differences are.
Yeah.
Number one is authoritarian leadership.
Yeah.
A central leader or small leadership group is revered and often seen as infallible, divine, or specially enlightened.
That's a problem
Ooh.
right there. That's a problem. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. So I don't know. Do we want to just like maybe we just like pause and if there's anything we want to say around each topic, because I think there's going to be a lot of things that come out of some of this. So is there anything that like have you guys seen this?
I think that a cult is not so much Christianity being a cult, but that it is a culture inside of Christianity, the cult culture, which can pop up in literally any organization, mainly religious organizations. The cult culture can appear, it can show up All you need is a couple of bad actors, bad apples, and
one
couple of-
narcissist with a messiah complex
Yeah.
and a bunch of people who are not like totally anchored.
Yeah.
People.
yeah,
You got a
couple of-
problem.
Yeah,
you
that's
got a big
right.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about I don't know if I mentioned it the other week, but Jordan Peterson's new book, he's talking a lot about, or was it a podcast actually, it might have been, but he was talking about the sociopaths making use of, like, it's not that they believe it, they just want the power. And that's what, like, at least the first few things you've read there are it's all power.
Yeah.
So it's not that they really care about whatever it is that they're leading, it's just that they're the leader, and that's the point.
Is anyone here familiar with the town of Munster during the Reformation?
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah. Dan Carlin did an episode on it. Prophets of Doom. I don't know if you guys did.
Maybe.
know
I don't know if it's
Dan
too
Carlin.
old.
You know,
Love
Dan
his podcast.
So good, hey?
Oh.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the ones it's past now. It's not in the free catalog anymore. It's in the history.
I have to start spending.
Yeah, it's only $2. Come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, this particular episode, he talks about the town of Munster, and as I'm trying to remember exactly where it was. I think it was Germany. But he talks about like the Anabaptist uprising and how the city like toggled from Catholicism to Protestantism, and then like the Anabaptists got control, and they were radicals. That they were much more violent. Much more problematic, and then the groups of Protestants are then fighting with each other, and it's becoming like this whole thing. But he catalogs what happens, and there is this guy who sets himself up as like a Jesus figure, and the people follow him, and he turned the city into a cult basically. And as the sorry, my phone's just going off, so I'm just turning it into Do Not Disturb.
There's a sale on Hardcore History.
Oh, there's a sale on
Sorry,
Hardcore
I'm
History.
just gate crashing. It's $99.99 for the entire catalogue.
If they start listening to that, they'll stop listening to us.
Sorry. Why not have both?
That's right. We live in abundance, my friend.
Yeah.
That's right.
Anyway, sorry.
Yep. That's good. But yeah, anyway, my point is, the really interesting thing from that story that's relevant to this authoritarian leadership point is that the guy who started this cult kind of thing, he dies at some point. The city's sieged and all the stuff's going on. He dies. His two IC is like, God has made me the next prophet. And the people are like, sweet.
Cool. We're
on board. The first guy, I can't remember which order it was.
Goodness
I'm pretty sure the first guy was like literally unhinged. Like he was definitely, he drank his own Kool-Aid, right? The second guy,
I love that.
the second guy was very much an opportunist. He like there's an opportunity here for power, and I'm gonna take it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it didn't end well. Like that, he came to a very
Spicy end.
yes.
It's funny how it usually goes that way.
Yeah, that
Maybe not
always-
with the first dude, but definitely down the line it always ends kind of
very
violently.
badly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't go well for him a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I know of a guy. He was in Queensland quite a few years ago, like 10 years ago. He was pretty popular. He was calling himself Jesus.
I remember this guy. King of Roy?
King of Roy.
Yes.
Yeah, the
And it
King
was
of
like
Roy
just a
Jesus.
couple towns over from where my brother lived. And my brother was just like, I just stayed away from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He just saw it from afar off. He was like, that is sketchy.
Yeah.
Isn't there a new dude running around who's saying it's like the amalgamation of Islam?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we were
yeah,
messaging
we
about
were
this
talking
week.
about
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
that's pretty present and just like,
How much is that social media buzz, and how much is that actual followers?
I haven't actually
haven't looked
seen
into it?
anything about it, so I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Oh, you haven't seen him?
I just heard someone talking about it.
Oh, okay. We should share it afterwards.
It's crazy though, because it's like this one guy will get a crowd of 50 people and then start just going off preaching, being all charismatic. And then someone will go, this guy's nuts. And then share it on social media. And then people will go, this guy's huge.
Yeah.
He's got this huge crowd because there's like 50 people and you can only see the first
front.
3 rows.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, and then that guy just blows up.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and no one ever really believed in him in the first place. But then it's
Yep.
like this social media thing, man.
Yep, the stamp of approval.
Anyone could be a cult leader these days.
Yeah. I literally was watching that video of him talking, and when it cut to the audience, I'm like, can't see much audience.
Yeah, that's right.
Like,
I was
it's like-
thinking, I'm like, I don't actually
Yeah.
think there's that many people here.
Yeah.
Pretty small room.
Yeah.
But he's just up so high.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's
he's
got Messiah
elevated
vibes,
and-
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like-
Yeah.
I don't know about
Yeah.
Messiah. I was Luciferian, maybe.
Yeah, but what I mean
He's
is like
elevating himself.
himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Elevating
Yes.
himself, talking a lot about himself.
Yeah.
A lot of I this, I that, I am he,
Eye
I
problems.
am this. Yeah,
Yep.
he's got eye problems, big
Yeah.
time.
Sorry, you can't see that far.
Should have gone
Yep.
to Specsavers.
Yeah. Okay, so
Uh.
the second point is excessive devotion to a leader or ideology. Followers may abandon previous beliefs or relationships in favor of absolute loyalty to the group or leader.
Mm.
So I think that's pretty obvious in a lot of cult kind of scenarios. Isolation from society. Cults often isolate their members from outside influences, including family, friends, and media, to maintain control. So I don't know what the King of Roy Jesus actually did, but like the come on.
What else are you gonna call him?
Yeah, I know, that's right. I'm not going to call him Jesus. So, but like I don't know what he was like, but like a lot of these cult figures, they create the compound. The people come in. Like, you know, think about what's the dude's name in Texas? David Koresh, right? The Branch
Yeah.
Davidian cult. You know, they will become more insular, and then eventually he gets to the place where he's, you know, declaring the women are his wives, and like
Oh, that sounds
Yeah.
like another religion I know about.
that seems to happen a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right before.
But
they
that's
get
kind of it, right?
Shot and killed.
That also seems to be the ending.
Yeah.
At least the one with King of Roy, Jesus. He had Mary Magdalene come, Mary Magdalene
Like-
also come back, and
Yep.
that was his partner.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was both of them.
And so and I think there was like a John and Peter as well. That was,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was like reincarnation of those guys,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
they were just in the same spirit, like
Yeah.
where they've talked about in the Bible, like, oh, is
Came
it
in the spirit and power of Elijah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Wow. You'd have to be in a crazy place to be willing to say that stuff, right? Like, because I mean,
You'd have to believe it, or you'd have to, you'd have to know what you're doing. In either case, it's sad.
It's scary
'Cause I was
either
just
way,
thinking, like,
right?
I wonder if the angels have a sense of humor and like see this and laugh. But I'm like, no, they probably don't, because they probably just
cry.
go, "Oh, poor dude," or
Yeah.
or they're like
It depends if
upset because they're
Yeah.
willfully, misleading people.
yeah,
Point 4 was control over members' lives, micromanagement of personal life, including diet, relationships, finances, and even thoughts.
Oh wow.
That's the one where I feel like that's where it often starts. It's like diet, clothing, relationships. This is how you date. This is how you dress. This is what you eat. This is blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, open up my Bible. Where's that written? It's not in here. It's a cult.
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But I mean, also it's sort of like, are they gonna excommunicate you if you don't wear what they tell you to?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if they're saying this is how you should dress, this is how you should act, this is how you should eat, this is how you should date, and you go in, you're like, I'm not gonna do any of that. I'm just gonna chill, and they're like, that's fine. We welcome everybody.
Yeah.
You know, is that a cult, or is it just people with crazy ideas?
I mean, the things you just listed sound like society. Like, isn't
Exactly, exactly. I mean,
so-
in the Seventh Adventist Church, we hold up a certain standard for the people who we let hang around in our church. You know, like at my last church, we had a kid who would come in and he would go into he was like probably 19. He would go into the toilets and he would make big balls of toilet paper. He would dump them in the toilet and
Yeah,
then he would
block
throw them
cloth.
against the wall.
Oh.
And we're like, dude, we're kicking you out.
Yeah.
Like you can't be here because we hold a certain standard. You know, you
you're
can't do that.
damaging property. Yeah.
You know, but we also had this guy Wayne. Shout out to Wayne from ITM. Tried to give him Bible studies heaps of times. Wasn't interested.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, "Do you believe in God?" He's like, "Probably." And he's been like steady coming to ITM church for like 4 years at least, maybe more.
Yep.
We all know him. You know, he could talk the ears off Dumbo the elephant.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep.
and he'd go out the front and have his smoke.
Mhm.
He'd come back in and he'd eat lunch with us, and then he'd wash the dishes, pack up the chairs,
Mhm.
and he'd go back home. You know,
He was there for fellowship.
He was there for fellowship. He had no interest in God. He had no interest in the Bible. We weren't kicking him out.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people. You know, he kind of smelled a bit funky. You know, but we loved him.
Mm.
You know, I mean, he was at home and he lived in a caravan, like out in the middle of the bush somewhere. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, everybody loved Wayne, and you know, he didn't hold to the 28 fundamentals of the Adventist Church, but I don't know of any church I've ever been to that would have kicked him out. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly right. And I think this is the control, because like in scenarios like this, any dissenter is a reason for another dissenter, and so they need to crush that quickly. That's just the classic control tactic, right? Just to skim through the last handful of them, us versus them mentality. Cults often portray the outside world as evil, lost, and dangerous, reinforcing dependency on their group. Use of psychological manipulation, like guilt, fear, love bombing, thought reform, and to maintain allegiance. Prohibition of dissent. Questioning leadership or doctrine is strongly discouraged or punished. Dissenters must be shunned, excommunicated, and labeled as traitors. Two more. Exploitation of members. Financial, emotional, physical, sexual is a common form of abuse in cults. And number 9, apocalyptic or special revelation claims. Many cults claim unique access to truth, divine insight, and predict end-time scenarios to create urgency and loyalty.
Yeah, there's a few in there that are interesting in that they're present in Christianity. I'm not saying it's a cult, but it's some of the key,
Which ones?
like end time events. I'll have to look at the list, but there's probably 2 or 3 in there that were.
Yeah, we're definitely a bunch of doomsday callers for sure.
A bit of us versus them stuff.
Though, is that more to do with sometimes the people within the, like Christianity within the, what's the word for different churches and denominations? Or is that more talking about kind of like how the system of that denomination, that religion is set up? Because you can have it embedded into the core beliefs of the church. And so then people are believing in the core beliefs and all of that. Or there's just a few people who in the church or denomination who have a few of these ideas here and there who that's just how they've sort of navigated it themselves.
It's a bit of a different thing. It comes down to leadership though, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, you can't have a cult without a cult leader, really, can you?
Yeah.
Or leaders.
Yeah, I think there's probably, to answer part of your question there, I think there are a lot of people who are in churches who are cult followers just looking for a cult leader. And so, like there are people that I can think of that I know that I'm like, you know what? I think if the right person showed up, like they would be all in for that. And I think those people in and of themselves are not so much dangerous as anybody else, but in the right scenario with the right concoction of people, then you've got issues. I think there are perhaps at a local congregation level, I think there are congregations that operate like cults. Like there was a church that I attended for a short time, and we arrived. Like, one of the things that it mentioned in here was love bombing.
Yep.
We arrived and we were love bombed. It was kind of like, oh, you're so great. Come over here. Here's some food. It's like, like it was like so friendly. And we were like, oh, this is lovely. This is really good. And then like, because we didn't, dress the way they dressed and think the way they think and ate the things that they ate, it was like, oh, that like Satan's using that to like draw you away, and like this whole thing, and like
that's manipulation.
You go to their house like after church in the afternoon, and they'd just be sitting around, and the thing that like the whole conversation, not just like a bit of a conversation, the whole conversation is how this person they did this, and so like they're so far away from God, and this is they,
Ew.
and it was like,
Yikes.
yeah, we were there for just like a couple of visits or whatever, and we were like,
Not again.
yeah, no, I don't think so. Like, you know, but I
Me.
think that's the example of that's what's in my mind when I think of like at a congregation level, this happens. But foundationally, it's a misunderstanding of the gospel.
Yeah, big time.
That's the problem, right? Like, 'cause I think that, yes, cults are an issue, and sometimes they can be very deceptive. You used the word charismatic earlier. You know, the leaders, if they're sufficiently charismatic, they can get a lot of traction.
Yeah.
You know, David Koresh, who I mentioned earlier, right? There's, I was listening to a series of sermons. I don't know. Have any of you guys heard Herb Larson?
I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah, you know who I mean? Yeah. His cousin, by Herb's description, was one of the smartest and most theologically astute people he knew in his entire life. And he went to David Koresh to try to get him back on the right path before he went like way out and crazy.
Yeah.
And got suckered in.
Ugh.
And he was one of the guys who died in Waco.
Wow.
Yeah. And he told that story. And I remember that was the first, I heard that story when I was probably 20, I guess. And I remember that was the first time, like up until then, I kind of thought, well, I've got the truth, so I'm going to be fine. Like, I'm never going to get sucked in by this.
Yeah,
And-
even the very elect.
yeah, but even the very elect, right? When I
Yeah.
heard that, I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to be much more humble about my own capacity here. Because if this guy was that smart and he got taken by this, then, you know, anyone is susceptible.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, a question I wrote down was, if we think Christianity isn't a cult, how do Christians avoid it?
Yes.
Because it often ends up in these scenarios where, as with all people structures, there are leaders, there are followers. So, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I was going to say, we've got to have that personal relationship with God, which comes into it, but that also can come into the very elect, because the very elect often would have like that sense of, hey, I'm reading my Bible, I'm praying every day, I have a lot of knowledge on this sort of thing. But even then they can get, and it can be seen, and they can believe in that they have a really good relationship with God, which they could very well have, but can still be manipulated and charmed by their charisma.
Yeah. Like you've seen people screw up their lives in every way possible, but you've never seen anyone screw up their lives by following Jesus, right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, I would say, well, that's a pretty good start. But you've still got to be aware of the culture, the cult culture.
The cult culture?
The culture.
Yeah.
Which is like what you were talking about, that church that you visited really seemed like that culture, you know?
Yeah.
Where it's like those people, I'm sure that they love the Lord. I'm sure that they love the Lord and believe that they had a strong relationship with Jesus, at least stronger than the other person, that person over there, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a culture thing.
Yeah.
You got to be wary of.
You know, I would call something out to answer the question. I think there's two aspects to it. I think there's the individual aspect and there's the corporate aspect. Individually, I think understanding the true is the easiest way to spot the counterfeit. So the better we have an understanding of what, you know, who Jesus actually is, what the gospel actually is, the more we're likely to be able to see something that's out of place.
Or what the church is supposed to look like.
Yeah, what the church is supposed to look like. Exactly. And so that is step one, I guess. But coming at it from the corporate side, I think one of the reasons that it says, like in Hebrews 10, 24 and 25, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, as is the manner of some, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. There's a few good reasons for this. Fellowship is really important, but I think for heresy filtration, right? Like I think the fact that God designs us to be together in community means that there's a high probability that there's going to be enough people together for someone to see something and say, that's not right, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think there is a massive responsibility on leaders, to good godly leaders, right, to observe where these sort of cultish practices are starting to take root so they can take action and do something about it. So,
That's well said.
Yeah, and not just having one leader like like in Timothy, but even the way Jesus instituted the early church leadership, there wasn't just one apostle
Yep.
that was
Council.
in charge of everyone. There was like 12 dudes. Like trying to get 12 people to agree on something, not easy.
If you've ever been on a church board, you'll know this.
Yeah. Should have had an odd number so that they can't ever be stalemated. But anyway.
Oh, well, Jesus was 13, right?
Oh yeah, true that. He vetoed them all though. You're banned. Yeah. But yeah, there's like multiple people, and like the more people sincerely following, it's like like rubbing the rough edges off. Like just say they're getting married. It's like anyway. Yeah.
But it's a very good point. If you have one person at the head that everybody looks to, then Satan only has one person they need to corrupt, and they got the whole church. You know, and I think that, like, I did the Book of Timothy with the teens at Raymond Terrace Church, and we went through it, and it's like you've got deacons, elders, all these different roles, and none of them are put higher than the other. You know, and the way that the church is supposed to be laid out was like that. Not really a man leading at its head, but a group of people who the congregation elects, that they trust, and then ultimately Jesus is the head. You know, and you go, well, this guy, this lady, her, him, so and so. We trust them in their relationship with Christ. And so we want them to be in charge of the church, because they will know what Jesus wants us to do, because ultimately he is the head. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah. And it's interesting when you read the qualifications, a lot of them are like just descriptors, like, married to no more than one wife.
That's right.
Sober-minded, different things like that. So like the fruits of the Spirit, like we just talked about. So there's evidence of God working out in their lives, but it's their works that are judged.
Yeah. But because that's all we've got.
Yeah.
We can't see the heart like Christ.
So
we can only see the outside, and so he's like, well, this is what they should look like on the outside.
Yeah.
Because when I judge the heart and it's a really good heart, this is usually what they look like. So look for this.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The last two verses of 2 Timothy 3 in that section talking about the elders, verse 6, it says, "Not a novice, unless they're being puffed up with pride, they fall into the same condemnation as the devil, and also having good testimony of those outside the church, lest he fall into reproach and snare of the devil." So it's like there's these works that they want to see, but we know from our own experiences that the first couple of things would be fairly easy to fake. But not being a novice means that you're experienced in the faith, and there's evidence of that. So it's not just someone who's appeared and they meet all the criteria, like, oh, good enough, slap him in. It's someone who's been tested and tried and been found to be true, but also has testimony outside of the church. So it's not just who are you on Saturday morning, it's who are you in your business, who are you, out with your friends, when you're mucking around, like, what is, like, who are you as a person, like your whole person, not just who do you present to the people who you want to impress.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the thought I had was Ephesians 6, 11, and put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. And in 13, therefore take up the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. Anyway, in my thinking, like, we go through all the different things for the helmet, the breastplate, your shoes, your shield, your sword, your helmet, all of these stuff. If we are able to put on all the pieces of armor, because a lot of cults start because of the devil, because he's manipulating, wanting to distract, deceive from God's truth. And so if we have the armor of God, we are able to withstand the deception from the devil.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so, because this comes back to personal preparation, right? That personal connection with God, like you were saying earlier. If we have that, then we're much less likely to get taken in at the outset.
Yeah,
I agree. I was thinking, just to go back, I think to one of the very early points that you made, Steve, some of the Christian churches that meet a lot of these criteria, I think, any individual one of them doesn't always mean you're a cult, but you stack enough of them together, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And I was thinking, there are the whole, us versus them or closed kind of scenarios. There was a guy I went to I'm trying to remember. I don't even know why I was there. It was like a solar electrician, but he was like specialized in solar and had a company that was focused on that. And I was chatting to him. I was doing some website work for him. And anyway, he asked me something about the weekend, and I said, "Oh no, I'll be at church." And he's like, "Oh, you go to church?" Yeah. And he goes, "Oh," he said, "I used to be a part of a cult once." And I was like,
Badge of honor.
Right, okay. And then it came out he didn't mean like a cult. He was talking about the the closed brethren, is it?
The exclusive brethren.
Exclusive brethren, that's the word, right?
Yeah.
And this is secondhand information, so
They're loaded.
Yeah.
Why did he leave?
Well, one of the reasons that he left is that one of the practices, obviously you're not allowed to go in if you're not one of them, right? And so but in the worship services, one of the routine things, because the treasurer knows how much money gets brought in, they know if how much you've given for tithe. And if they deem that that's not enough based on the kind of job that you have, they'll call you out in church and get you to prove what you make
Oh my
and
God.
stuff like this.
Boy.
And he said, and that's normal stuff,
Bro.
And he mentioned a handful of other things that were equally scary, and he's like, and he grew up in it, and he's like, I just got to the place where I'm like, no, this isn't it. I don't know what this is, but it's not it. It's not I'm out.
Not for me.
Yeah. And I really respect him for that. The fact that he had that experience, grew up in it, and then could see, what, this is, if there is a God, this isn't him. This is not appropriate. And I think if you are looking at your church and feeling that, then these are some really good questions to ask yourself, because, if what your church is doing is not matching up to Christ, then check it out. That doesn't mean that it's a cult, but it may mean that it's not the place for you.
Yeah.
And don't also throw the baby out with the bathwater, because the church that I referenced earlier, it's a church that is also an Adventist church. So I still attend an Adventist church, but the one I attend now looks nothing like the one that I mentioned in the past. So just because one group of believers is a certain way doesn't mean they are all that way. But it's really important that we use our critical thinking, that we are an active participant in figuring this out. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, something I was thinking about a little bit this week, especially replying to some of those YouTube comments around church authority and things like that, is that some things are believed because the church or men past have given them authority. But I think it's really important for us, what is it? Let every man be convinced in his own mind. I know that's talking about feast days, but I think the principle still stands in that Paul isn't saying this is what the Jewish apostles would consider to be appropriate, therefore do. It's no, this is something that if your conscience dictates that you should do it, you should do it. And if not, and I'm not saying, of course, you can throw everything out, but with a lot of these things, it's I don't know. It's we have our own accountability and responsibility for our own faith and our belief systems, and church structure and church tradition is useful, but I think that we need to not just be like, oh well, the church believes it, or people 2,000 years ago believed it, therefore it must be true, or the council in AD 400 said that these books are approved and these books were disapproved. Therefore the Bible is this. It's like, well, is it? Why don't you know? So anyway,
just as you were talking, then Steve, it occurred to me that I think the best advice that I could give anyone who's trying to evaluate any group of people doing anything is what is the fruit of that movement? And you can't see that in a week or even a month. It takes time to observe that, but if you watch long enough,
you'll see.
You'll see.
And I guess that's what they're listing, judging by the fruits.
Yeah. Yeah. By their fruits you'll know them. And like I would hazard a guess that anybody who stood back from any of the, the famous cults of history, anybody that observed them long enough, they all come to a fairly predictable end. And it not always on the same timeline, but if you see what effect does this have, it might feel great, it might look great, it might start off great genuinely, but eventually that, when it unravels, what does it look like? Does it end up with people being closer to God and, in humility and service to others? Or does it end up with pain, suffering, broken relationships? Like what is the fruit of what you're looking at?
Yeah, I like something that Pastor Luke's been saying, because he's been doing a series on like where our church's tradition has come through and why we believe what we believe. And he's talking about some of the early dissension around some critical topics. But he said that if you sit back, like you're saying, and just run the logical conclusion of that doctrine out, if you can see that it doesn't end well, then it's probably not a good way, like a good place to start. But people just go, oh, well, I believe it because it, this one verse says it, or well, play it out and see in 10 years, in 50 years, where that's going to lead yourself, the church, whoever, society. How is that going to play out? Like polygamy, how's that going to play out? Let's run this, might be fine for the first generation, a couple of generations later, I'm taking Sherlock Holmes for historical advice here, so take this with a massive grain of salt. But a couple of generations later, you run out of women, So, anyway.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've gone some good places. Anything that you guys wanted to explore before we wrap this one up in particular?
I did have the thought about the Nicene Creed, because that was made early on with the early church to characterize, like, okay, if like you're a believer of Christ, these are things you have to
core tenets.
Core tenets, yeah.
Yep.
What do you think about it?
I think that's another good thing about determining whether it's one aspect, if it's a cult or not. Because if they don't believe in any of that or the things said in it, like, have they diverted from kind of the core of what Christianity began as?
Yeah.
I'm just looking it up.
So could you in theory believe all the things that the Nicene Creed says don't still be a cult? Do you reckon?
Probably, because you can add to it, I guess.
Well, we definitely have.
The 28 fundamentals. But that's also like, I don't think all Christians should just go, okay, if we believe the Nicene Creed, we're all good, because there's more to it. It's just a nice, short, punctual.
It's a summary, right?
Summary, yeah.
We believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and all things visible and invisible. We can probably say amen to that, right?
Yep.
Okay. And in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, begotten of the Father before all the worlds. Light of light, very God of very God, begotten, not made, being of one substance with the Father, by whom all things were made, who for us men and for our salvation came down from heaven and was incarnate by God, the Holy Spirit of the Virgin Mary, and was made man and was crucified also for us under Pontius Pilate. He suffered and was buried, and the third day he rose again according to the Scriptures, and ascended into heaven, and sits at the right hand of the Father, and he shall come again with glory to judge the quick and the dead, whose kingdom shall have no end.
Well,
It's pretty punchy, isn't it?
Mostly.
They're cramming
I
a bit
wouldn't
in
say
there.
he's sitting at the right hand of the Father at the moment.
He ascended to there. And we believe the Holy Spirit, the Lord and giver of life, who proceeds from the Father and the Son, who with the Father... Oh, that's interesting.
Very sounding quite Catholic.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, it is. Yeah. Who with the Father and the Son together is worshipped and glorified, who spoke by the prophets. And we believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. We acknowledge one baptism for the remission of sins. We look for the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. And it has literally at the bottom, note, the word Catholic here means universal, not specifically Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
I did have the thought because you were talking about Jesus sitting at the right hand of God. Does John in, I think it's Revelation or 1st, 2nd, or 3rd John, say that he's, oh no, it was Stephen, when he was getting stoned, he was like, looked up and saw Jesus sitting at the right hand of God.
Yeah.
If I, so that, like, in that sense, it's true, but we have an understanding as the Adventist Church that he's in the
He's acting as our mediator in the
Most holy place.
most holy place. Yeah.
What's that verse?
But couldn't you still...
where-
Wait a second. Couldn't you still say that's where he is, though? Because
why?
as in...
There's the
in Daniel, where it talks about in the throne room scene.
Well, God's
Isn't that-
presence literally sits over the mercy seat.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Exactly.
So Jesus could still be.
the throne room is the most holy place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hang on, wait. In both in Daniel's vision of the throne room, Ezekiel's vision of the throne room, and John's vision of the throne room, there's only one throne. Right? So, like, when it says that he's sitting at the... well, this is going to have to be a start. I'm going to look into this. But when it says that he's sitting at the right hand of the throne of God, like, where's he sitting? You know, because there's God, and then there's the two covering cherubs, then the 4 living creatures, the 24 elders, the great multitude, right?
Do they share the
Surrounding
throne?
Could be a big chair and 2 chairs on the side if it's like Jesus and the Holy Spirit. Maybe.
It's
Well,
an interesting...
The spirit moves among the wheels in Ezekiel anday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we're getting into the weeds here, but we'll have to make an episode out of this. We'll have to get a little bit deeper. So
looking up verses, but we'll save it for another time.
we'll save that for another time.
But one question that I want to ask before we move on is, for us
Yes.
here speaking in the podcast, how do we know that we're not in a cult? Like for the churches, we all attend the same churches, you know. How do we know that those churches aren't cults? What's an example of like, well, I saw the church do this, so they couldn't possibly be a cult or something like that, you know? Like I gave the one about
A
my
lack of
friend,
leadership.
My friend Wayne.
Wow.
Pretty good one.
Yeah.
I gave the example of my friend Wayne, like,
Yep.
you know, any cult worth their salt would have kicked him out, you know?
Yep.
But we welcomed him in and we loved him. And for me, I was like, well, this is very much non-cult behavior. And, you know, we did not have someone in our head that we looked to as infallible, and no one was being abused in any way, shape, or form. You know, it's like, and I see that same.
And I would
thing
say
in
we
the churches
encourage-
that I'm
No,
attending
sorry.
at the moment.
Yeah.
you know?
I would say generally we encourage critical thinking.
Yeah.
We don't want to make decisions and set beliefs on behalf of the people that are around us.
Yep.
We encourage them to
Empower them to make their own.
form their own opinions.
yeah. Like I know of churches outside the Adventist church that just excommunicate people for believing something different, you know?
That's worked in the past.
The
You can make a
Adventist
whole
church
religion
has-
about that.
the Adventist church though has actually a number of different streams of theology.
That's what I was about to say.
Oh,
you
sorry,
know,
yes,
and there's a lot of disagreement among the church. Even disagreement among the 28 fundamentals, you know. We have Trinitarians and non-Trinitarians inside the church. No one's being kicked out. No one's being excommunicated. We try and have a fruitful and good discussion and whatnot.
Lively discussion.
Lively discussions often, but I've never seen one get that bad. Maybe you have. I've never seen one get so heated where people actually start to dislike each other.
It's probably just
As people.
society, but there probably should be a bit more. Like we've probably gone hard the other way as a denomination. So opposed to having like these are the hard lines that you're free to work within. If you're outside the lines, you're banned unless you recant. But we're kind of like, so long as you're like within this like bubble, like you're fine.
Yeah, but like we won't baptize you
Yeah, fair.
unless like.
But if you're already
no,
baptized, they're not really disciplined.
even if my friend Wayne wanted to get baptized, we wouldn't. He doesn't want to get baptized. You know, but like, dude, you're going out, you're having a smoke. You don't even believe in God. It's like, we're not going to baptize you, you know?
Yep.
But that's different. Like, we welcome him into the church.
There's a difference between fellowship and membership.
Yeah, exactly.
They have to know the commitment they're making and understand, like, okay, well, this is what we believe. Like, if you really want to be baptized into our church, that is, because it's probably a whole can of worms which we don't have to go into, but because like, you can baptize someone just generally, from my understanding, but if you're baptizing them into the church, then that's
this is a can of worms.
Yeah.
So generally, yes, baptism in principle is a standalone thing that can be done for anybody who accepts Jesus as their savior. Absolutely. Our church does not do that separated from membership.
Duncan, then profession of faith.
Yeah. So, there's a reason for that.
This is where I start to have contentions with the Adventist Church, if I'm being completely honest.
Good. Be honest. We should have an episode on this. But like I can understand why they do that.
Yeah.
And the reason they do that is because
To avoid cults.
kind of, right? Because
suppose.
if someone is baptized and they're like, oh, well, you know, I belong to this church now, and they've got some really crazy idea that they're now espousing and they're doing it in the name of the church, you don't have any lever to pull that says, no, you actually don't, we don't collectively believe that, right? So if they're a member, you then have you're baptized, you are a member. Those are two different things, but they happen on the same day, and so therefore they're associated. We now have a way that we can disassociate ourselves from crazy people, right? So I can see why they've done it, but Jesus didn't necessarily sign someone up and be like, hey, can you sit down and sign this membership form? You know, so it just didn't happen. So anyway, I feel
sorry about that can of worms.
No, it's a good can. It's a good can. So we shall leave it there anyway. But thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, share it with a friend. We will see you next week for another episode. God bless.
Bye.